All right, Michelle, I am so excited to have you on. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah. So I know you and I are both doing like a podcast swap. So I know you a little bit more, but I'm sure that most of my audience doesn't, or maybe they do. They know you already. So if they don't, can you just tell us a little bit about you and where you're from and all those kinds of fun things?
Yeah, I live in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a mom of two boys that are wild, and I'm married to my high school sweetheart. And I guess not we, me. I have a podcast that's called The Busy Years, where motherhood and business meet, and we talk about motherhood topics and business topics. And I also do sales strategy and event strategy for creative entrepreneurs. And then I host online events, and I do one a year that is a business topic. And then I do one that's geared more towards just moms that will be coming up sometime in the spring.
Nice, nice. So I know you and I were talking about like just how we seem so similar. Like there's so many things that we both related to in terms of our history and our story and our lifestyles and all these different types of things that like there's so much that's parallel. So I know that today's conversation is going to be awesome. And I know one of the things you and I kind of chatted about as to what we wanted to talk about today was kind of that feeling of mom guilt, right? And I know it's one of those things I hear come up so frequently with my clients. And I know it was something I struggled with a lot. And, even that like shame talk, like talking ourselves down. I remember one time forgetting the crackers or snack or whatever it was at school. And that talk and that guilt over like not bringing it. I was like horrible, no good mom. And like all of these things, like just that guilt spiral. So I think guilt in mom motherhood is like so multifaceted and permeates so many areas. And so I'm really excited to kind of dive in and navigate through that a little bit. So tell us a little bit off is like, what has been your journey and process through kind of that like mom guilt? Like, what has it been like for you?
Yeah, so I think that there's different facets of having mom guilt. And I think that the guilt that we feel is different when our kids are little and our babies. And then there's
Hmm.
guilt of when our kids are a little bit older. And sometimes I think that moms that do have mom guilt, or when we feel guilty, we see there's other moms that literally have no mom guilt. There's no shame. And then for me, I'm almost like, well, gosh, is there something wrong with me? Like that I
Yeah.
shouldn't feel this way? And I think that the first thing that we should say is like, there's nothing wrong with you for feeling mom guilt. It's just literally different personalities of how some people don't have guilt around it. And that's okay that they don't have guilt. And then there's some of us that do. And for
Hmm.
me, a lot of the guilt, now that I look back and I know, I had postpartum depression even after probably my first son that went undiagnosed, and I had it really bad after my second son. Um, but the different facets that it even took in motherhood, because with my first son, we had some friends that lost their lives
Hmm.
in my son's first year of life. And so then I had this guilt around that. I thought that my son had to have all of these things and do all these things before he was one. And I
Yeah.
felt guilty because I was like, well, if I don't, then he won't have these memories. And what if something happens to me? Um, so there's guilt that comes from just things that happen in our lives. And then there's like the guilt of when postpartum depression happens, and we feel guilty because we're not being a good enough mom, or we think we're
Hmm.
not being a good enough mom. When if you're a mom right now that's listening and you're in that deep postpartum little years and you feel like you are not coming up for a breath, I will tell you, and I know it's hard to hear, but I promise you, someday when you come up for a breath and you look back on the pictures, you're going to realize, like, oh, I was a good mom and we did a lot of things.
Yeah.
I just can't remember because my brain wasn't able to process those things. And there's a lot of research behind what happens to our brains in postpartum depression, and how once we shut off one thing, if we're trying to shut off feeling sad, we're also shutting off feeling happy. So those things also, guilt comes around a lot of that as well.
Hmm.
And then we have like the guilt when our kids are old enough and they say, all you do is work all the time. When
Yes.
like, no, really, I only work a few hours and I
I
spend
know.
I spend so much time with you. You just don't realize. And then it's that guilt that comes in as well. But sometimes we have to think about what recharges us. And
Yeah.
really, am I feeling guilty for something that really, truly brings me life?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because I feel like I'm in that phase where it's like all you're doing, you're always on your computer. I'm like, I'm on my computer for a few hours in the morning. Like, and I run everything, like our finances, our bills, your doctor's appointments, like all everything in your gymnastics, like everything in life happens from my computer or my phone. So if you want any of that to happen, but yeah, it's funny how like that little bit of guilt there comes. So, do you feel like, I know you kind of alluded to it, that like you feel like some people maybe like just inherently struggle with mom guilt a little bit more. Do you think that it's something that's learned? Like, is it something that came from like cultural expectations, or is it just more of this inherent personality? Is it something that we stay stagnant with, or can we evolve and grow with and like out of, or like, how does that all look?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think sometimes we think of our mom. Sometimes people have that. Maybe you had a Mary Poppins mom. I had a mom who was like doing all the little extra things and all the extra crafts. And I so thought that I was going to be a Mary Poppins mom, because even in college, I was like the Mary Poppins nanny. And then I had my own kids and I was like, I can't do all that. Like, I am not the Pinterest mom. I am the like, I'll take you on an adventure mom, but I
Yes.
like don't do all the little extra fun things that maybe my mom used to do at Christmas. And so sometimes I have like that guilt because I
Mm,
think that they should have that experience, which if they had that, that would be great. But we also do other things that create these family traditions. And my kids don't know any different.
yeah.
And my mom still creates these special things for them. So I think sometimes it's realizing that we have to realize, like, what is my standard bar? Because we compare ourselves to so many other people, because there are those moms who are the Pinterest magical.
Yeah.
They make all this stuff for the birthday parties and it looks fabulous. Like one of my best friends, Allison Carter, she is like the party queen. And my parties, like I want to be like her, but I'm probably like a fraction, and it's okay. And the kids don't know the difference. And
Yeah.
it's really what brings you joy. And for me, going out and taking my kids on hikes or getting to actually go somewhere is more important to me than making a whole like section food birthday party.
Yeah.
So I think it's also kind of realizing, where's my guilt stemming from? Is it coming
Mm.
from because I think that people want me to be this way, or am I trying to live up to an expectation that I truly inside myself don't even really want to live up to?
Mhm.
Um, or sometimes maybe there is an expectation of like, no, I really truly want to be like that. But I think we have to look at ourselves like, in this season, am I even capable of
Mhm.
doing that?
Yeah.
Especially if you're a mom who's suffering from postpartum depression, because I'll be honest, when I was deep in it, I had thoughts that I mean, people would think that I didn't even want to admit. And sometimes like I don't even want to tell people what I thought because it was
Yeah.
so bad. And really, the only thing I could do every day, that if I got us to the gym and my kids got to go to the play and I went to yoga and had an hour to myself, that was a successful day.
Yeah.
And I did something that day. And if we came back and watched TV the rest of the afternoon, that's what we did,
Yeah.
or we went somewhere and did one thing, then I was successful for that day. And just giving yourself grace in whatever season you're in as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you even like highlighted that too. Like I look back at when I had my first baby, and her first birthday party was all ladybug themed, and I literally, like cut the tomatoes and put them on the cream cheese with like split apart so that they all looked like little, with the chives, and they all looked like little ladybugs, and everything was red and black, and I mean like the whole Pinterest party, right? Like ladybug. And then as time has gone on and subsequent birthdays and subsequent children have come, like That ain't happening. I'm like
Mhm.
going to Target and the dollar store and buying the throwaway plates that are already set to go. And it's like you get a couple of balloons and bravo, happy birthday. Or even like this last year, I was like, right before COVID was my son's birthday. I was like, Chuck E. Cheese for $300, done and sold. We're like, I'm out. Like, I don't have to clean up, I have to make anything, I have to do anything, I have to do any decorations, like nothing. And so I think sometimes, like you talked about that seasons, like sometimes there's guilt, I feel like, in that, like, oh, well, I used to be this way. Like I used to have the capacity, or I used to have the time to be able to show up this way, but now I don't. And so like there's this guilt of how we used to be and how we are now, and feeling that, like, even comparing that comparison to ourselves, right? Like not even comparing to external, but just that like internal comparing of like, I used to be able to handle this and now I can't. And so there's that guilt there. And I think that even that is kind of important to bring up, that it doesn't even have to be comparing to anybody else out there. And at the time, doing all of that ladybug stuff, that was fun for me. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed it and it was really fulfilling. And to now, if I were to step into that, it would still be fun and fulfilling, but it would feel like I just don't have the capacity and the space for that. So it would feel more like a chore. And so letting go of that and transitioning into like what is most fulfilling for me right now has been really powerful. And I think we talked a little bit about that beforehand, and I want to dive in a little bit, but oftentimes I see so many moms, and you highlighted it about going to work out, right? Like,
Mhm.
or taking that time away to do something that they want to do, whether it be a hobby or going to the gym, or whether it be a business or whatever it may be. They feel guilty because it's time away from their kids. And I like, just like you, I had a Y membership and I worked at the Y 0 times. The only reason I used the Y membership was for the childcare, and I went and sat in the coffee shop and worked. And at the time I felt so guilty about it. Felt so guilty because I'm like, I'm literally sitting in a coffee shop at the YMCA while I put my kids in the childcare so that I can work. But yet that work was the very thing that was making me feel so fulfilled and making me
Mhm.
feel like I could show up better for them. That, I think it was like an hour and a half or 2 hours you got at the YMCA. So after that 2 hours, I could tuck it all away and then actually show up for them. So how would you recommend, and like, how do you navigate through that guilt of like needing that time away to be fulfilled, and that guilt for maybe those moms that, and that this is like tons of questions thrown at you all at one time, but like that guilt for those moms that don't feel fulfilled with just motherhood alone?
Yeah. And I think that there's so many moms that don't want to admit that motherhood isn't fulfilling them.
Mhm.
Because, like, for me, I never expected to be a stay at home mom. It wasn't until postpartum depression hit so hard that we decided, you know what, maybe I'll just stay home for a few months. And then in 3 months or 6 months, when he's 6 months, I'll go find a different job that is more fulfilling to me. And more fulfilling in the sense of, the current corporate job I had wasn't fulfilling me. So I
Yeah.
was looking for something else. And I kept always trying to search for something, even though I wish that I would have been, now that looking back, I wish I would have been a little bit more content,
Yeah.
like in that season of like, girl, you are struggling. Like, you know what? Just be you and work on your mental health and then move forward. But even as I always knew that, and it's so hard because there are some people where making sure that their house and cooking and doing all those things really truly fulfills them, and that is good. And like,
Mhm.
God made them that way, and that is good. And we need those people who are going to be the ones that come up and support, like the moms that are like, I got the meal train, I'll bring you the food, because we need those people.
Yeah.
But then there are people like you and I, where in motherhood I was like, I just like don't feel fulfilled, and doing the same thing every day, I don't have any, didn't feel any self-worth. And
Mhm.
so for me, at the beginning of starting my business and doing things, it was just in the exploring stage of like, what free webinars could I get on and listen to? And who could I follow? Or maybe it was investing in some small courses. And for me, it ended up essentially being investing in a large course that pushed me towards like, all right, here we go. It's time to start something. But knowing that you're not any less of a mom
Yeah.
for not doing the things during the day and taking time for yourself and creating a business or creating a side hobby or something that you want to do or something that fulfills you, whether it is working out, whatever fulfills you, that those things are good and you need those in your life sometimes to balance yourself out mentally. Because if you just continue to do the things that suck the life out of you, you're never going to be able to come back up for air. And I can tell you that once you start doing something that's for yourself and is filling your cup again, you're going to look in the mirror and be like, oh, hey, like there you are. Like, cause there's that time in I think in motherhood, and not everyone experiences, but I did, where I would look in the mirror and I'm like, who are you? Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know who you are anymore. Like when people be like, so what are your hobbies? I'd be like, we're supposed to have hobbies. Like I'm just keeping everybody alive.
Yeah.
But once I started to do the things that fulfilled me, I found myself, oh, hey, here we are. Like, here's the person who was super ambitious and wanted to go after things. And that just brings a whole new life to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that is it's amazing too, because like there's days where I feel like I work like this all the time. Like I'm recording podcasts. I have interviews. I like literally am booked today from like 8:30 to 1. And so when I know that like I'm taking that time away, my kids are actually in distance learning. So I feel like we're not really separated anyway, we're separated, but like I'm not just putting them off doing their own thing anyway. But at the end of that, I know like I can turn this off and shut it off. And I have noticed that I am much more playful. I'm much more happy. Like the little things, like even, the kids didn't want to go to bed or whatever, like last night. And so, but I wasn't even fighting it. I'm not like, get to bed, because I'm not like cringing, like, oh my gosh, I'm just striving only for bedtime. Like it makes it so that my time with them was more fun, if that makes sense. And so it really has shifted and changed for me. And I think for me, it's been that constant like dialogue inside my head. Like, this is making me a better person. This is making me show up for them better. Like, this is making me whatever. And I think it's been that just consistent dialogue over and over and over again inside my head. But do you feel like it's the same thing for you, or what has made it so that like that shift from understanding like and valuing these things and knowing that these things are making you fulfilled and being in a place of not feeling guilty about it anymore and knowing that this makes you thrive? Was it something tangible or physical, or is it really just that mental dialogue too?
I think it is that mental dialogue is a huge piece, because I can't say that I don't feel guilty every day. There are plenty of times where I'm like, gosh, I really kind of feel bad that my youngest, there's days where I'm sending him to be with grandma so that I can work, when I'm like, gosh, should I be going and taking him somewhere and doing something? Because really, truly, I have 1 year left and then he goes to school. And then a whole new life opens up for me of having more time and getting things to do. So I think that it's something of intentionally, thinking, okay, like this is good for me. And knowing that like on Friday, I only have a few calls. And so on Friday, we're going to try to go do something. Granted, I live in the Midwest, and in quarantine, I feel like it has been so hard, like because it's not the same. But but the other thing that I noticed in the summer in quarantine is I would pick activities that also fulfilled me that we did together, because the kids still think they're fun and it doesn't matter. So like hiking in nature for me has been just like breathe life back into me.
Yes.
And it's so funny. People think, they're like, oh, well, you go take them to wear them out so they'll nap. I'm like, well, one, it does not matter. My kids do not nap for anything. And really, we're here for me. Like I make them sit down and I'm like, everyone, like just close our eyes. And what do we hear? What do we see? What do we smell? Because that also creates memories in depth for them, because that's one thing that I realized in my postpartum. When we shut part of our brain off, we forget all the good because we're trying to forget the bad. And so creating intentional thoughts and memories is also one way of then of helping you not feel guilty, because it's easier for you to remember, no, we did do all these good things. And so it is okay for me to go work on my business or do something that is just for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I mean, you highlighted, I remember talking to my friend and she now is like a new mom with 3 kids under 5 or whatever. And I remember talking to her at one point and saying, I'm like, find self-care things that you do with your kids. Like so many
Mm-hmm.
people think that self-care is all just like, I need time away. I need to meditate. I need to go to yoga or spin class or whatever. And those are all wonderful. I'm not like downplaying any of that. There are so many things you can do as self-care that are with your kids incorporated. And I think that that's amazing. Like for me, going for a bike ride or pushing, like even pushing them in the stroller down by the beach. Like I have so many memories with my first baby,
Mm-hmm.
going for a walk with a good friend of mine, and she had her baby and I had my baby, and we would walk, and like literally I think we would walk like 4 or 5 hours a day when we'd go. But it was just like I have so many fond memories of that, but that was my outlet. Like that was my way of, and but yet she was coming along with us. And for the beach is another one. Like I absolutely feel so restored and so wonderful and feel so great after the beach. And the kids absolutely love it too. So like this last Monday, we went to the beach. I sat there, they surfed all morning, and then we came home and everybody feels good. Everybody feels great. But it really was like I enjoyed it too. So looking for
Mm-hmm.
those things that are self-care, but yet it's like selfish in the way of doing them, but yet you're bringing your kids along the way too is really, really powerful.
Right. Because really,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, play dates are not for our children. They're for the moms,
I know.
for us to like talk. Like, I mean, yes, it's great. Our kids need the social interaction, but really it's so that as a mom, you can talk to another human. And even I used to have a place when I went to go work out, it was like the kids worked out with us part of the time. So it's also ingraining in the kids like good, healthy habits, or they're seeing their
Mm-hmm.
mom do these things. Um, because that's also as you're like going after your dreams or deciding to, create something, your kids are seeing you do something. And it's good for your kids to see like, oh, my mom can do other things outside of motherhood. And
Yeah.
that was one thing I used to kind of think about, that I always was like, if I passed away, what would my kids say my mom liked? And there was a
Yeah.
portion in my life when I was like, I don't think they would even know like what I did. But now they can say, and I ask them, what do you think mommy likes? And they can answer that question. And they know like, oh, mommy really likes nature,
Yeah.
or mommy really likes to cook and do all these other things. And it's so good for them to see. And it's good for them to know that it's okay to also have passions outside of whatever they like to do too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we underestimate how much they're watching too, right? Like I think it was that phrase of like, we tell our kids so many times, like they can do anything and they be anything that they want to do, but yet we get compartmentalized into this box of like, oh, well, I can't do it because I'm a mom now, or,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think it puts, especially on our girls, right? Like it can put that limit of like, well, once I become a mom, I can't do anything else other than just be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like, and it's amazing. Like I watched, like I came home the other day, I was like, I leaving for work in the morning and I looked in the driveway and there was like somebody had written with chalk, like all these like quotes on the sidewalk. And I was like, that's strange. Like who did that? And then I came home at the end of the day and it was everywhere, like all these quotes of like, you can do big things or like whatever, like up and down the entire sidewalk. And I came in and I asked my husband, I'm like, who was riding on the sidewalk? Did you see somebody out there today? And he's like, oh, that was Kinsley, my daughter, like the oldest one.
Oh.
So she's out there writing all these like motivational quotes and like inspirational things on the sidewalk. And I know it's because she's just watching the things and she's listening. But yet when we talk, she doesn't bring those things up. Like she doesn't
Mm-hmm.
say that and she doesn't, but they're listening and they're paying attention to the things that we're doing for sure. So it's amazing to like be able to show them you can do the things you want to do and still
Mm-hmm.
be an amazing human being in the process. And you still be a great mom and you can still be all of the things that you want, you know?
Yeah,
So
I
that was a
love
little
that. Is
tangent,
such a
but
that is such a sweet story. And like you should feel so good as a mom. Like my mommy heart for you was just like, oh, and it is. It's the things that we realize. And I say to my son like every day when I drop him off, like try to do something kind today. And
Mm-hmm.
I did get a message the other day from his teacher that was like, we got a new student, and Turner like took it on himself to go show him like the corner of like, this is what we have to do when you have to do things by yourself. Cause they do a lot of the rotation, and showed him like all the games. And I was like, oh, he like, it's setting in and he's doing things without even really knowing
Yeah.
that's what they're doing, because we're just teaching it to them. And even, you know, the things, because I have a lot of sales background, it's funny to hear my oldest son, he is like a negotiator to his, like, even like he negotiates everything. And I'm like, this is really hard for me right now, but someday this is going to serve you so well, because he has sat and listened to me while he plays. And I've been on calls talking to people about their business and the sales and how we want to word what we're selling to people. And it rubs off on him in ways that I'm like, dang it.
You're like,
no, we're not going to negotiate. I mean, even he broke his arm the other summer, a couple summers ago, and he was negotiating with the orthopedic doctor. Now, you said not the twirly slide, but how about a straight one? And I'll hold my arm up like this. And
oh my gosh.
Like, then, and she was like, is he negotiating with me? And I was like, yeah, yep, he is.
I know. Well, and that's honestly, like, I have worked in pediatrics for so long. And I remember talking to one of my families and I was like, you know what? The things right now that are like hard and challenging for you are probably going to be their strengths someday. So lay into that, help them define that, help them figure out a way to make those things assets to them, like down the road. You know, it might not feel like it right now, but hey, I'm on a call. Hey, I'm serious. Okay.
Are you talking about Matt?
No, go. Hey, Kinsley, we had this conversation the other day. We've been having trouble in the last few weeks with interrupting during my calls.
Oh.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, we can edit it out. It's fine. But
I know. Yeah. The other day, I think I don't remember which one it was, but I was on a call and literally like came out, like walked in and out. It was like 3 or 4 times. And I was like, go. And then she knocked over my mic and it was like, just go. No. So anyway, well, Michelle, this has been so wonderful. I'm so happy that you were able to hop on with us. If people want to check out and find where you're at, how can they do that?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram, and it's Michelle, Ann Hagen, or I am on Facebook, Clubhouse, and my website is just Michelle Hagen. I'm loving Clubhouse. So if you're a Clubhouse person, ping me into your room and I would love to actually chat with you.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for hopping on. I hope that everybody has enjoyed it and walks away today with a little bit less guilt. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.